So this is a final lesson on ratios, and we're looking at using something called the unitary method. Okay, and it's called the unitary method because it's based on finding out what one part of the ratio is, okay, which is talking about 1 unit. So that's where the name comes from. So you can use this when you are given the value of one side of the ratio, okay, and you need to either find the total value or the value of the other side. Now notice that that's a little bit different to before. When we were dividing a quantity in a ratio, we were actually given the total value. Okay, so that's how you can distinguish between the questions. So with the unitary method, we're given the value of one side. Alright, so here's an example. We're looking at making sherbet. Okay, it's made by mixing 3 parts citric acid with 8 parts icing sugar. So if I have a 240 gram pack of citric acid, so we're just given one side of the ratio, how much icing sugar do I need? So we're using one side to find what the other side's worth. Okay, so I think it's important first of all to write out the ratio like this, labelled, so we know what part goes with what ingredient. Okay, so if we've got 3 parts citric acid, I've labelled that C, with 8 parts icing sugar labelled I. Okay, so to first of all find out what one part is worth, we know that the citric acid, we've got 240 grams of it, citric acid represents 3 parts of the ratio. So 3 parts is worth 240 grams. That means that to get one part, we're going to go 240 divided by 3 is 80 grams. And remember, we're allowed to do that with ratios because we know each part of the ratio is worth exactly the same amount. So in this case, each part is worth 80 grams. If we know that, what one part is worth, then we can find out what 8 parts is worth, which is the icing sugar. So 8 parts would be 80 grams times 8, which is 640 grams. So in this case, 240 grams of citric acid requires 640 grams of icing sugar with this particular mix. Now I can show you this in a way that I guess for people who like visual representations or like to have a bit of a method about it. So it's looking at the same question, 3 parts citric acid, 8 parts icing sugar, we've got 240 grams of citric acid. And I've still started by writing the ratio and labelling it. Okay. The next step is just to fill in the information that we know and what we want to find. So on the citric acid side, we know that that's worth 240 grams. We don't know what the icing sugar is. So working up this way, we can go 240 grams divided by 3, which gives us 80 grams. Okay, and we know that that is one part. One part of this ratio is worth 80 grams. Moving across the top and down to the other side, we then can say 80 times 8, because we've got 8 parts over here, is 640 grams, or 8 parts. So you can see we've done exactly the same thing, but it just gives you something to sort of visually follow. Okay. Now another question that you might be asked as an add-on to this could be, what is the total mass of the mixture? Okay, so in that case you're just going to add your citric acid and your icing sugar, which you figured out, 240 and 640, which is 880 grams. Okay, one last example. So the ratio of adults to children in a crowd at a Wiggles concert was 2 to 5. We know that there were 900 children, sorry about that typo, in attendance. What was the total number of people in the crowd? So in this case, we're given one part of the ratio, but we don't want the other part. We don't want to know how many adults there were. We want to know the total attendance, okay? So the total number of people in the crowd. Right, first step, always write the ratio labelled. So if we've got 2 to 5, we're going to label that adults to children. That's what it was, 2 to 5 adults to children. Okay, first step, finding what one part is worth. So the children represent 5 parts of this ratio, and we were told that there are 900 children. So 5 parts equals 900. To find one part then, we divide this 900 by 5 and we get 180 people. So one part of this ratio is equal to 180 people. Okay, the last step, which is what we're after, is the total number of people in the crowd. So if we want the total number, we need the total parts, which we go 2 plus 5, adults and children, 7 parts to this ratio. So if one part is worth 180, 7 parts is worth 180 times 7, 1,260 people in the crowd.